Kristi Noem was on Fox News a few days ago, and she threw everything but the kitchen sink at Tim Walz. So I'll play the clip and then give my commentary.
Let's bring in Kristi Noem, who knows about Walz from her time in Congress and recently and currently as governor of South Dakota, which neighbors Minnesota, where Walz is governor. Governor Noem, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. So again, you served, and I did too, with Tim Walz in Congress, but you've had the privilege of being a neighboring governor of Tim Walz. Tell us what you've seen. What kind of leader is he?
Well, he's a bully, and he pushes mandates down on his people. In fact, we've seen a mass exodus of people out of Minnesota that have sought refuge in South Dakota, and they've come here to get away from what he's done to their families, how he's devastated their businesses by shutting them down, raising their taxes, increasing their costs, that they can no longer cash flow and provide for their families. So listen, this is a completely different Tim Walz than what we served with, Sean. When I served with him in Congress, he cared about people having their Second Amendment rights. He cared about giving people flexibility and freedom. We sponsored legislation together. He was from a more conservative district of Minnesota, but he completely changed when he became governor. We think we saw the real Tim Walz that he had been hiding for several years. He's got ties to companies in China. You don't go to China 30 times to be a tourist, to look at the sites. You go there because you've got an affiliation with their government. You go there and you take students there to learn from them. If you think communism is the way to better protect people, which is what he truly does believe. And he's got ties to companies in China, such as the Beijing Genomic Institute, that he's funneled money to. And that company has ties to communist and CCP leaders. So, he truly is someone that wants to undermine the United States of America. We cannot trust him by putting him in the White House.
Well, you're right. He undermined the freedom of his constituents in Minnesota. But you're right. We served with him in Congress. He was a moderate guy, right? Because he had a very Republican-leaning congressional district. But when he was unleashed as a governor, we saw the true Tim Walz come out, and it was crazy. You mentioned what's going on with the CCP. I want to talk about that. So he taught in China from 89 to 90. He visited the country 30 times. He got married on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. He honeymooned in China. And to your point, he promoted Chinese communism as a teacher to his American students. So I think what this does, Governor, is it begs the question, is Tim Walz a national security risk?
Absolutely. I'm 100% convinced he's a national security risk. This man wants America to grow up and be more like China, which is the exact opposite of what our leaders should be doing. I have spent all of my time fighting China, and for 30 years I've been working in policy on protecting our food supply, and we've seen China not only manipulate our currency, steal our IP, treat us unfairly in trade agreements. They've also spied on us. They've come in and they're taking and buying our land. I have banned them purchasing land and doing state contracts in South Dakota. The rest of the country needs to realize and wake up that we do not want a leader like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris in the White House because of how they would undermine our national security. It's a big concern, and I hope we start talking about it a little bit more, that you have to have people in the White House that truly want to protect us, protect our republic, and fight socialism, fight Marxism, fight communism. That's not Tim Walz.
Tim Walz's leadership has been so bad. You have the western portion of Minnesota that's asking to actually cede from Minnesota and join your state of South Dakota. Are you going to accept them if that potentially happens? You going to take part of Minnesota,
Sure.
Kristi?
Yeah, we'll take anybody that wants to be more free. But it's amazing if you look at the map of Minnesota, how little support he does have. The support he does have is in his bigger cities, but the vast majority of the land mass of Minnesota does not like his leadership, has left his leadership. We've had tens of thousands of people that have come from Minnesota and come to South Dakota because they find that he doesn't share their values, and he's crippled them and their economy, and they just can't stand it anymore and want to find somewhere else where they can raise their families and pursue the American dream.
Well, I'm on the eastern border in Wisconsin, and I have the same thing. We have people leaving Minnesota and coming to Wisconsin. They want more freedom, and we love their money, but it's crowding our rural areas. I want to quickly go to this, Governor, because new polling's come out since the DNC, and we see the races are very tight. We have Harris winning in Michigan, Georgia, and Nevada. Trump up in North Carolina and Wisconsin, right? So the race has tightened from what it was between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I guess my theory here is that this is a DNC post-convention bump. Want to get your take on the polling. Where is this race going? Should Donald Trump be concerned?
No, I think President Trump is doing fantastic. He's out there working hard and talking to people about how their lives could be different if he was back in the White House. So yeah, the race is tight, but also the media has been helping Kamala have a great couple of last weeks. But I think the truth is coming out after Labor Day. More Americans are paying attention, and they're paying attention to their pocketbooks, and they're paying attention to what gas prices are and how difficult it is to buy the supplies that they need for their kids to go back to school, and making hard decisions. So this is where President Trump shines, because their lives were better off when he was president of the United States. And I'll be in Michigan and Wisconsin, Montana, down in Arizona as well, I think, as more people get out there and tell the story of what his leadership means to this country, what it means to families, what it means to women and wives and grandmas as we're running our businesses and our families, raising them to be strong Americans. President Trump is the one who gives us the opportunity to do that. I tell the story all the time about when he was in the White House, he let me do my job. He let me be governor, make the best decisions for South Dakota. I've done nothing since Joe Biden has been in the White House except be on defense, trying to protect our freedoms and our liberties. So there's consequences to leadership, and it matters who's in the White House. And we need President Trump back there as soon as possible.
Well, the Duffy family went to South Dakota during COVID, and it truly was a free state. We were grateful for that. And I think you're right. As we come through the summer, when people are a little bit checked out, as they're doing some more vacations and kids are off from school, and we come back in September, that's when the American voter starts to pay attention. And Kamala Harris doesn't have policies to fix the economy, doesn't have policies to fix the border. She created the border crisis. So we'll continue to watch. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, thank you for being with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. Have a great day.
Sometimes I'm at a loss for words with these people. There's a part of me that is so used to just, they say something nuts, goofy, false, and I just respond to it in whatever way. But how do you respond to a person that gives a, not even like 10-minute interview, right? And just hurls stuff off, just rapid fire. When I and Tim Walz were in the house together, he was a moderate on gun control, but now he wants to take everyone's gun away. When he became governor, there was a mass exodus of people from his state to mine. Let me just try to go through a little bit of it. Okay, so first of all, after the 2018 Florida high school shooting, Walz became more strict when it came to gun control. And I have no reason to believe that wasn't just an organic shifting of position on his part. He has not called for abolishing the Second Amendment or any other, ridiculous manner of referring to that no one might have. When it comes to this supposed mass exodus of people from Minnesota to South Dakota, I looked up one report, it was 6,000 people left from over there. I don't know if I would really call that a mass exodus. I guess, I don't like DeSantis, but when he talks about how he's, there's a lot of people who are like leaving California going to Florida, or they're leaving California going to Texas or Georgia. What gets me is that's like really extreme on the part of people that live here, in terms of there must be some really horrid living conditions in this state for someone to just travel across the country and just stay over there and switch their residence altogether. But if Minnesota and South Dakota are right next to each other, wouldn't it kind of make sense for there to be some overlap, where every year, every couple of years, there's a few thousand people out of the hundreds of thousands that live there deciding, hey, I'll go live in this one instead. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, she says something interesting, which is that Walz has a connection. He's been to China 30 times, and he has connections to this this Chinese company, and they have connections to the Communist Chinese Party, and the Chinese Communist Party, rather. And I said, isn't it interesting how it's guilt by association, where if we're to believe, right, that Walz has connections to this Chinese company, he is now a communist as well, or is affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party because they're affiliated with a branch that he it's the new Red Scare. Call everyone that you don't agree with that's left wing a socialist, communist, all these terms that mean nothing. And really, what's interesting about this whole interview, and something that I like, what made me feel compelled to talk about, because we saw something pretty similar with Noam when she was talking to Sean Hannity. But what I'm starting to notice is that, and Noam is just an example. She's not the only one that does it. If you watch this interview and watch the interview she had with Hannity about Walz, and I guess to a lesser extent Harris, she speaks in these really abstract, nebulous terms about problems like societal ills. Oh, Americans are noticing the cost of gas prices. What does the vice president have to do with gas prices? Oh, uh, Walsh became a radical and he believes in communism. Okay, what does that mean? Is he going to ban guns because of his communist idea? I mean, just you use these terms that don't mean anything, so you can basically sit on TV and bash your opponent in the most generalized ways possible, and at the same time not really say anything about yourself. Like, when Trump was president, I had freedom to govern and I've had to protect the freedom of my ability to, like, it doesn't, she's just saying nothing. She's taking, enter Democrat name here, and says, oh, this person is anti-gun. I'm surprised she didn't mention it here. Pro-illegal immigration, pro-China, just generic copy and paste positions, left and right. Here we go. That's all that is. The other part of this, so, like, again, the stuff she says really doesn't mean that much. I will say it is, there has been what's interesting is, like, after the Trump shooting, right, there was a call for less political, not only just rhetoric, like, to be toned down, right? She really called Walz a national security risk. Like, damn, a sitting governor who happened to have supposedly gone to China multiple times is a threat to national security. And that doesn't sound extreme on her end. But I guarantee you, if a Democrat said that about a Republican, they'd all be running losing their minds. This video is also interesting because it so what I have said before is that Noam is one of the dumber politicians of the last 10 years, because you had this lady that had a meteoric rise as the governor of South Dakota, right, was able to get a lot of attention off of the pandemic and was one of Trump's biggest backers in terms of the people who were in office before he became a politician, and who I believe had a truly excellent chance of being his running mate before she squandered it with her stupid dog slayer book. And I've been trying to figure out, because I said she doesn't, after her term as governor ends in 2027, start 2027, she has nowhere to go. She can't run for another office in South Dakota. She maybe could run for president and get like 2% of the vote and fade out before Iowa. But besides that, there's really no elected position she could aspire for. So my theory, this is just what I've been observing from these few interviews that I've seen from her, is that she is trying to, cut her losses. She realizes she couldn't be Trump's VP after that stupid thing she did, that horrible book. So because she couldn't be Trump's running mate, she's going to use the fact that she neighbors the state of Harris's running mate to be an attack dog against him, possibly even more effectively than Trump's actual running mate, Vance. And she's hoping that by doing this, she'll probably get either a cabinet position, or hell, who knows, maybe if she sticks up enough for Trump and Vance this time around, and in 2028, Vance might pick her for VP. I mean, you never know. So I that's the theory I have, that this whole Walz is the worst man that ever lived stuff that Noam is doing is just so she can try to get more out of Trump, because she knows that besides getting a job with his cabinet, if he's able to win in November, that is, there's just nowhere else for her to go. So I like to cover these interviews because they're so interesting. Like you really see how they just have nothing. They just again enter name of Democrat here and put this their I'm surprised she didn't bring. I don't think she brought up immigration. I noticed that it was you know trying to take our guns. He's a radical. He's a communist. He's a socialist. He's weak on China. Just the same old generic stuff they would say about anybody with a D by their name.